Over the years, I had done several projects on Clear Creek, some stream projects, some wetland projects. I remember a day when I was trying to deal with some stress, and I took a walk on a new trail along Clear Creek. As I walked up and down the creek, I was like, gosh, other people should know this is here. But when you walked in the creek, you would sink up to your knees, and these banks were very unstable. And I thought, oh, I really want to improve this creek. I want to bring this creek to the rest of the community.
If you look back over the historic photographs, you can see where Clear Creek used to have a nice meandered channel, a very naturalized stream. And when they put in Interstate 80 and Interstate 380, and particularly the interchange between the two back in the 60s, they straightened a good portion of it.
I kept looking for an opportunity to improve the creek. And so back in 2017, 2018, the state of Iowa and the Corps of Engineers were coming up with a method to assess the value of streams. And once that process was approved, we could do what was called stream mitigation banking. I thought, this is it. This is what we can do for Clear Creek. We could restore it, generate credits, sell those credits, and then invest that back into the community.
So we wanted to control the water, give it some room to spread out through those riparian banks and benches. This project has done that for us. And we also wanted to slow it down. Water that moves quickly picks up soil and sediment quickly and deposits us in places that maybe we don't want it.
Because that water goes up over the bank and sits on the landscape for a period of time, it's able to filter into that soil and clean up and cool off before it gets back into that stream.
There's water quality benefits because we reduced bank erosion, so there's no longer sediment entering the creek. There's also just a lot of habitat that was created both in the upland outside of the creek as well as within the creek.
There was very little places for fish to hide, to breed, and so by restoring this creek, we created sandbars and pools. And so those deep pools are where the fish can hang out. The sandbars are where from our macro and microinvertebrates can live. So you're getting all these different habitats. You're helping with the fish population. So now you're bringing people who fish out to the creek.
The city has really interlaced the recreational component into the system too. So they've developed mountain bike trails and concrete trails that are located within the bank area.
We were really able to take and re-meander it and restore it a lot closer to its historic condition while, adding 20 plus acres of native prairie buffer.
So the next steps are to monitor the vegetation, make sure the bank establishes in the way it should, and then there'll be some maintenance, of course, of the bank along with that. And then really it's the credit sales. So the city of Coralville will sell credits to, again, people who disturb a stream somewhere else. And the revenue from the credit sales will pay off the project, but then also generate money for the next project. So the city could continue as their credits are sold for this project, they can apply that money right to the next piece and just continue to march down Clear Creek and have a complete restoration of a Clear Creek within the city of Coralville.
We ended up with a product that is just a wow. When you drive by this area and you see that meandering creek with the little pools and oxbows on that floodplain, it's just wow.